No, that's the thing. It's one of those mentalities. I mean, it makes open source sound like the hippy dippy cult, to be quite honest. And I'm not sure the average. It's one of those things. I think it's open source and trouble in general. It's like I'm not sure it's really fully understood that open source actually makes money, and this development is largely funded through alternative means. Because the general logic of it's free is they're not making any money, which is far from true on many things. That's like, I honestly would like to see the books of the Open Source Foundation. Because there's some heavy hitters, multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar companies that are now contributing to that. They obviously see something here. I don't know. So I guess it's something anti-Linux and anti-open source fanboys will continue to pick on, but it's probably something that we shouldn't really be worried about anytime in the future. Is what your general assessment is? Are you just thinking?
No, halfway.
Okay.
No, I think with the majority of the open source projects that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, they're probably going to be fine for a while.
Well, it's like, and to be honest, that's actually one concern that has been voiced over the years about Ubuntu, and that what happens when their millionaire funder decides he doesn't want to sink any more money into it. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But
I think they've actually reached a point at this point where they're more than breaking even, so he's not really having to put any more into it, as far as I understand.
Okay.
I just saw an article probably 6 months ago or more that said that they'd reached that point and broken that barrier, so they're actually a profitable company now.
Does anybody know how much money they've spent on that to this point? I know it's been millions. It would be interesting to find out how close they are to breaking even. How many years? Because that's kind of. I'm not saying it's the shining example of this, but I have noticed, as a general rule of thumb, when people start bashing on this issue, they cite the fact that even if Ubuntu's broke even now, how many years is it going to take it to make any money?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I wish I had $100 million to go just be idealistic.
but they were actually going in the hole in the beginning because they were spending a lot of money, one, taking a distro that was good and making it a lot better by paying developers to do it, and two, by making loads and loads of CDs to send out to market it. I mean, I'm curious how many millions, if not billions of dollars they spent just sending CDs out to people. Because back in 2004, they were one of the first on the scene saying, have free CDs, have as many as you like, give them to everybody you know.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the much more economic way to do that is download an ISO. Download as many ISOs as you want.
But if you think about it, Ubuntu would not be where it is today if they hadn't done that. Because how many people can honestly say that they went out to the web and downloaded that and tried it the first time? Honestly, the first time that I ever heard of it was somebody said, dude, this company's giving out free CDs. Go to their website. Yeah, so I got 10 copies and I gave them out to all my friends. And it is that viral mentality
I know it's the viral mentality you're talking about, but I would argue, as long as there's one geek in a 50-mile radius of you and the ISO is free to download, there will be free CDs in that 50-mile radius of the distro that you get to that geek. It's like, I can't count how many Linux discs I have given out over the years at my cost.
I know, as far as the end user, the grandma, like you've talked about before, at the end of the day, she is much less likely to take that CD that has a Sharpie written on it, Ubuntu 10.04.
Yeah,
than
that's
she is to take
true.
this disc this professional-looking purple disc that has the label stamped on it. And I mean, you can do that at home as well, but a lot of times people aren't going to do that. They're just going to take the Sharpie and write on it.
Well,
it's all a matter of marketing.
It's a matter of marketing, and honestly, what I would love to see Linux do is convince OEMs to partner with them.
Yeah.
Ubuntu Ubuntu is the closest to that right now, but honestly, Ubuntu is the last distro I would like to see do that right now. And the reason I say that is because that would increase the uphill battle other Linux distros that are not subscribing to the purest Ubuntu philosophy are having of convincing end users that no, this is not something Linux doesn't do. This is something Ubuntu has chosen not to do. And that's a differing philosophy, and it's a rub. And I'm not bashing on Ubuntu here. I think for the grandmas of the world, the ideal end user introduction to things, especially for OEM partnerships and other things, I don't see out of the box Ubuntu being the best foot forward. Ubuntu with a bunch of tweaks by an OEM, yeah, but I'm not sure that's a partnership Ubuntu would be happy with either. There are loads of distros that would be more than happy with that partnership. Basically,
there was actually a story a while back about Ubuntu licensing MPEG codecs from the MPEG LA to actually license them to OEMs. So that might be something that they're working on for the future, is making things more friendly out of the box, but still without the graphics driver codecs, the wireless codecs, and all those other wireless drivers. Sorry.
It's not just that. There's a bunch of packages that Ubuntu doesn't include for virtue of savings. You talked about this in your reviews once or twice. Every time Ubuntu complains about, we don't have enough space in our disk, I look at a distro that fits on a 700 megabyte CD that has all these packages we say Ubuntu's missing. It's like, if they can fit that on a 700 megabyte CD, why can't you fit that on a 4 gig DVD? I'm confused here.
Sadly, a large portion of the problem that they have there is they include OpenOffice by default, and that is a huge amount of space on that CD that they're including. And a lot of the other distros are going to DVDs at this point to rectify that.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on that. Although, given how well the Get OpenOffice installer works,
but it depends on you having a network connection to do it.
It depends on you having a network connection to do it. And since I've started doing Linux-centric videos and doing stuff, I can't count the number of people who just miss that Get OpenOffice is included. It's like they're like, if they don't see OpenOffice, so they don't realize if they click this thing called Get OpenOffice, they'll have OpenOffice. It's just it's that fine line thing. Again, this is something OEMs could easily address. The best solution I see for the average end user addressing this is an OEM does that, and the way all OEMs do this is they just create a little partition on the hard drive that's a restore ISO. And that can be as large as the OEM wants it to be. And with some of the compression things for these auto restore ISOs and other things, that can get pretty damn small too. Because, I mean, it can actually get smaller than an install ISO for Linux disk. It's like, I'm not quite sure how that understands, but if you use the right compression algorithm, that recovery ISO actually winds up being smaller than an install ISO CD would be, which I can never quite figure out how that works. But it's not. And one of the things that's becoming very predominant in laptops these days is a built-in flash drive. It's not, all OEMs aren't doing it, but it's something that has become cheap enough that if they wanted to, it would be like $5 a unit, and it'd be on the laptop motherboard little flash drive, that's your recovery ISO, and yada yada. And I'm sorry, the operating system that lends itself perfectly to just everything's there, everything's good, is Linux. Especially if we want to move forward to this phasing out the CD-ROM phase. Which, no OEMs are selling systems right now without CD drives.
Yeah.
Because they really can't get away with it.
Think about how long these OEMs went while they were forcing floppy drives on you.
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is, that's more a Windows problem and an OS X problem than it is an actual limitation. Because there are times I need to stick a Windows disk in a Windows machine. And Microsoft does not have a live USB implementation because of the way Microsoft does their licensing. They don't want to allow the idea of a burnable USB for Windows. That would be way too easy to hack. Not that the DVDs aren't easy to copy, but you have to actually get your hands on one. If they start making a downloadable version of Windows you can just image to a USB drive, forget it. I'm sorry, that's hacked day one on torrents, on IRC, that's going to be everywhere the day it comes out. And that will never die. And OS X, for obvious reasons, doesn't want to implement that. Linux has been implemented that way for years, especially the live CD things, and they don't have a thing. Pretty much, with the exception of Microsoft software, today, almost any software you buy on the PC side, and I think pretty much on the Mac side too, on Windows, Mac, or Linux, most of the time you're not buying a physical disc unless you actually want to. You're buying a direct download, which is actually cheaper than the CD, and then you back it up yourself. Honestly, I looked at it the other day, and I actually have a machine here that doesn't have a CD drive, and I'm like, when was the last time I used a CD drive? It's like, honestly, the only time I use a CD DVD drive these days is when I'm watching a DVD. That's about the only time I use them these days.
I occasionally will use them to do a distro install just because I've got several flash drives, but I've got them all full of data. I've got them full of videos and content.
The other thing is I'll still use one to do a distro install when either the distro I'm working with does not support live USB, because they don't all of them don't, and you're not going to be able to burn. I know you can, but Ubuntu is one of those distros that isn't designed very well to make a DVD install. I mean, a USB stick installer. It's more geared towards making a DVD, isn't it?
They've actually got a built-in USB creator now.
Okay. Cool.
And I've used it several times. It runs on Mint well too.
Okay. So it's okay. Then they've caught up with that.
I think they realized that it wasn't working that well, so they created something to make it better.
Yeah. It's like my experience with it was iffy. I mean, if you do what you were doing, you could fix all the problems you'd come across, but it wasn't always the ideal. Sometimes you were better off just to burn the disk. So I'm glad they fixed that. However, there are people who still have older computers or cheaper computers that don't support USB booting. They're far and few and in between, but believe it or not, there are some OEMs still manufacturing computers today that do not allow USB booting. They're not as predominant in the US. They're more predominant in the EU. In a couple of countries where things like locking the BIOS is still legal. It's like basically they don't want you to do anything with this computer. They want you to go buy another computer. I don't know if that's good or bad. We've kind of hashed on that side. Can you think of anything else to really cover on this week, or?
Nothing big.
Okay. It's another. I guess we're gonna wrap this up here because we're coming up right on about 4 parts. We're right about an hour. Again, no Linux show next week. Oh shoot! I forgot to say this last few weeks. We haven't really been getting any Q&As. Q&As are always welcome. As any questions y'all have, feel free to ask them. There is no such thing as a stupid question. I apologize if this show is a little dry. We kind of milked some of this stuff to make an hour, I almost feel like. But yeah, it's relevant content. I'm not sure it's interesting content, but it's relevant content. So bye for now. See y'all in, I guess, 2 weeks.